Did you know? The first Star Wars film suffered numerous production woes. Even funding the film was a challenge for George Lucas and his producer Gary Kurtz. The pair took Lucas's pitch to several studios and each one of them rejected it. Eventually, Lucas and Kurtz met with the executives of 20th Century Fox, most of whom didn't want to back the project. However, Alan Ladd Jr., the head of creative affairs at Fox, enjoyed Lucas's previous film, American Graffiti, and agreed to fund Star Wars. Lucas was very passionate about the project and offered to waive his $500,000 director's fee in exchange for its distribution and merchandising rights. Ladd Jr. and the others at Fox agreed, and Lucas was paid only $150,000 for his services. Ironically, of course, this ended up costing Fox untold billions of dollars and made Lucas one of the most powerful independent filmmakers of the 20th century. However, the film's difficulties continued well into production. Constant technical and weather problems plagued the film's shoot in Tunisia and London. This caused budget issues and delayed the movie from a Christmas 1976 release to May 1977. There were even problems with the model work by Industrial Light and Magic. The team had trouble producing the shots Lucas wanted. Lucas himself wasn't sure if he could use the spaceship sequences at all. It got to the point where Fox told Lucas he had 1 week left to complete shooting, and so the rest of the film was shot at breakneck speed. Lucas took no breaks between production and post-production, moving straight into the editing room after filming was complete. He claimed that the first cut of Star Wars was a complete disaster and fired editor John Jimson after the pair had creative disagreements. In his place, Lucas brought on Paul Hirsch, Richard Chew, and Marcia Lucas to save the film in editing. The trio often had to use literally every frame available to them, and in one case, footage was even looped to make the scene last long enough. Regarding the final cut of the film, Paul Hirsch stated, "The only things that are there is what's presentable. Everything behind the scenes was a mess." At one point during production, Lucas felt a sharp pain in his chest and went to the hospital fearing he'd had a heart attack. He was diagnosed with hypertension and exhaustion, and was told to reduce his level of stress, but instead, he went back and doubled his efforts. As the release of Star Wars drew closer, Lucas began to worry about its success, and scheduled a vacation to Hawaii to avoid reports on the film's debut. Before leaving for the trip, Lucas was out to lunch and encountered a huge line of people waiting outside Mann's Chinese Theater. He asked what they were waiting to see, and the answer was Star Wars. Unconvinced that this and other early reports of success weren't a fluke, Lucas traveled to Hawaii for his vacation anyways. It wasn't until he saw Walter Cronkite on the news discussing the giant crowds waiting to see Star Wars that he realized how well the film was doing. Star Wars opened in just 32 theaters, but ended up in over 1,000 at the peak of its run. At the time, Star Wars was the most successful movie ever made. During production of The Empire Strikes Back, Lucas was very protective of the twist ending. So much so that the famous line, "No, I am your father," wasn't written in the script or performed on set. Only a handful of people even knew Vader's true identity before the film's premiere. Lucas himself, his producer Gary Kurtz, Episode 5 director Ivan Kershner, James Earl Jones, who had to speak the line, and Mark Hamill, who was told only immediately before the scene was shot so that Luke could properly react. Hamill recollects that the line used in its place was, "No, Obi-Wan killed your father." But David Prowse, the body actor for Darth Vader, says he didn't mention Luke's father dying during filming. Secrecy would become the norm for the franchise. Return of the Jedi was shot entirely under the working title Blue Harvest to hide its production. The cover story was that Blue Harvest was a horror film, and every facet of the production, from the film reels to the crew t-shirts and hats, used the working title and tagline, "Horror Beyond Imagination." This was done for two reasons, the first of which was to avoid price gouging. Star Wars was the first major blockbuster movie franchise, and as a result, locations might have been tempted to charge more if they knew Star Wars wanted to shoot there. The second reason was to avert curious fans from investigating the production. While shooting under a working title wasn't unheard of, it was fairly uncommon in the 80s, so most fans looking for Episode 6's secrets and spoilers wouldn't notice a little horror film called Blue Harvest. Scenes set on the forest mood of Endor were shot in Californian forests. During this part of production, actor Peter Mayhew, who played Chewbacca, needed to be accompanied by crew members wearing fluorescent vests whenever he was in costume. These measures were put in place for Mayhew's safety, making sure he wasn't targeted by hunters mistaking him for Bigfoot. This behind-the-scenes story inspired a 2004 Hayden Blackman comic called Into the Great Unknown. The story is set around Solo and Chewbacca jumping blindly into hyperspace to avoid Imperial forces, only to crash land on Earth in the Pacific Northwest. The duo are attacked by natives, and Solo ultimately dies in the captain's chair of the Millennium Falcon. 126 years later, Indiana Jones and co. searched for a legendary monster that was sighted in the area. They find the Millennium Falcon and discover Solo's skeleton. The skeleton feels familiar to Jones, who then decides to leave. Blackman made references to both Star Wars and Indiana Jones in the comic. Solo compares Earth to Endor's moon, referencing that the scenes were recorded in the Pacific Northwest. Solo states, "I have a bad feeling about this place," a variation of a line spoken in every Star Wars movie.
I have a really bad feeling about this.
He also tells Chewbacca, "I'm going first into the great unknown," just before he dies, mirroring a line by Wuhan in the Temple of Doom. The title Into the Great Unknown comes from Wuhan's line as well, and is shown on page 1 in the style of the Indiana Jones logo. Star Wars has also been referenced in movies such as E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which featured several toys and costumes from the franchise. This started as a nod from director Steven Spielberg to his lifelong friend and partner George Lucas. But Lucas later promised to include an E.T. cameo in Star Wars to return the favor. True to his word, several members of E.T.'s race can be seen on one of the balconies in the Galactic Senate in The Phantom Menace, one of whom is named Grebleeps, or Spielberg backwards. Interestingly, when E.T. sees a child dressed up as Yoda for Halloween in this film, he excitedly approaches him, exclaiming, "Home, home!" This, along with the inclusion of the E.T. cameo, suggests that Star Wars and E.T. potentially take place in the same universe. Another result of Lucas and Spielberg's friendship was a sort of amicable rivalry. After visiting the set of Spielberg's film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Lucas was convinced his film would be outperformed. But Spielberg himself was convinced that Star Wars had the leg up. Lucas proposed that the pair trade 2.5% of the other's profits from the films, and Spielberg agreed. Spielberg has made millions off of this deal and continues to earn money from Star Wars for doing absolutely nothing.
Laugh it up, fuzzball.
Make sure you go subscribe for more facts and trivia, but before you go, we'd like you to vote on what franchise you want to see covered in the future, Star Trek or Blade Runner. Click on the annotations or comment below to vote. I'm JonTron. I'm doing a series called Starcade. Isn't that funny? Because this is Star Wars too. You can click that link and it'll take you to it.